Vanderby, former sideman, keyboard player for little Stevie Wright, the Stevie Wright band. We toured the east coast of his Hard Road album, and it was quite an adventure. And I'm a piano tuner, and I was living in Sydney at the time, and I was contracting for W.H. Parlings, tuning pianos in the suburbs. And I was called to tune the piano of Mr. Young in Epping. And so I rolled up there on a morning and knocked on the door, and it was George Young from the Easy Beats. I recognised him straight away. I was in my 20s then, early 20s. And I thought, oh, I must play for George, but at the end, you never know your opportunity, do you? So I spent a good hour and a half tuning the piano for him, because I wanted to do a top job, him being George Young from the Easy Beats. And at the end I played. And he walked up to me while I was playing. He said, "Oh, Ray, boy, you can play." And I said, "Well, thanks, George. Yes, I've got a few chops up my sleeve." He said, "Well, Stevie Wright's looking for a keyboard player to do a tour. Would you like to audition?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to audition." So within a matter of a few days, I was living in Bondi Road then, just up from the beach. And within a matter of a few days, a bongo van pulls up out the front of my flat, and it's Malcolm Young in his t-shirt and jeans. He knocks on the door, and I didn't know who he was at the time. And he helped me with my keyboards, because in those days I had Wurlitzer electric piano, Mini Moog, Mellotron, Hammond organ. It was all sort of analogue playing and lugging gear around. And I got to talking to Malcolm as we went over to the old Manly Theatre. That's where Stevie was rehearsing. And I said to Malcolm on the way over, I said, "Do you play, Malcolm?" And he said, "Yeah, I play a bit of guitar." He said, "I've been doing a bit of roadie work, but I do play." I said, "Have you got a band?" He said, "Yeah, we've got a band." I said, "What's it called?" He said, "AC/DC." And I said, "Oh, that's a cool name." I said, "Where are you playing?" He said, "Oh, we're doing high school halls at the moment." And so we got over to the old Manly Theatre, and I met Stevie and the boys. It was Steve Housden on guitar, Billy Ryland on bass, Malcolm Wakefield on drums, and Larry Duryea, the legendary Larry, on congas. And of course Stevie. And we got along like a house on fire. We had a great time, and we rehearsed Evening 1, 2 and 3, and Hard Road and Black Eyed Bruiser, and we had a great time. So we hit the road, Sydney, Melbourne, and I don't know what happened in Melbourne, because I ended up having to hitchhike back in a Mini Minor van, and somehow the gear got back somehow. Oh yeah, well, you want me to start at the beginning? Okay, well. My name's Ray Vanderby. I was born in Holland in 1953 in Apeldoorn, in Groningen, in the middle of the country. I was born on the 17th of January, smack bang in the middle of the freezing winter. And I lived my first few years in Apeldoorn, of course, as a young child. And then the family, we moved to Sittard in the south, when my father was actually a carpenter by trade, but he worked in the coal mines. And I guess in those days, just after the war, not that long after the war, you go where the money is. But in 1959, my parents decided to take up the invitation of the Australian government to migrate to Australia. And so in 1959, we got on board the Waterman, an ocean liner, myself and one of my sisters, Iniki. I've got 3 sisters, Iniki was 2 at the time. And I remember that voyage well because I was seasick for the whole 6 weeks. I could not eat anything. The only thing I could eat was dry biscuits. Holy God, I've never been so sick in all my life. And it went for 6 weeks. 5-year-old boy with his head over the rail. But there was some, I remember going through the Suez Canal and all the traders, and I remember the hundreds of flying fish flying alongside the ocean liner. Took 6 weeks to get to Sydney. So, got to Sydney. We moved in with my uncle, my mother's brother. He had a spare cottage down the back of his block in Duryea. And I remember having to sleep in the bath for the first few weeks until things got organised and got a bed and, well, we were there for a couple of years. I went to Duryea Public School. I couldn't speak a word of English when I got to Australia. But one of the school teachers took me under her wing, and in the lunch break she would teach me English. And so I slowly started to learn English. After about 2 or 3 years in Duryea, my father went to where the work was and the money was work. He was building houses around Sydney. This is the late, through the mid-60s, of course, or early 60s, and they were probably building houses with asbestos, which could be pertinent later. But yeah, so after about 3 years in Duryea, my father took up a position as a farmhand at Black Springs, the other side of Oberon. So we moved to the farm. We had a farm cottage, and the owner of the property gave me old Robin, the horse, and I rode that horse to school. And it was Black Springs Public School. Was a very small school, all the country kids, and that was the first school that I got bullied at. I got bullied at that school because I was from Holland and I was an outsider. They called me Dutchie, and so that was the first school I got bullied at. From there we moved around quite a bit. I went through, we went to Wellington, Yeovil first, Yeovil Public School, Wellington Public School. My dad started building bridges on roads and we'd have to live in a caravan on the property, so we went from Yeovil, then Wellington, then to Bathurst Public School, and up until I got bullied at these schools, and and it was very unsettling having to start a life all over again. You just go to start making friends at school, and you've got to move, and you've got to go to a strange school again. It was a bit unsettling, but I know my parents had my best interest at heart. When I reached high school age, first form, they decided not to stop moving around and they needed to settle down, and so they settled down in Orange. And I grew up in Autumn Street, went to Orange High School, got bullied there by the boys, by the footballers, and but on Sundays we would go to church, and us kids would go to Sunday school first. And I remember we were going to the Methodist Church in Anson Street, and the big old hall that's still there now. We used to go in there for the Sunday school, and inside the hall there was an old pianola. And I walked into this Sunday school one Sunday, and this girl, she was playing Heart and Soul. Da 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 da. And I looked at her playing that and I thought, I could probably play that. That doesn't look that hard. And I'd never played a piano. I never laid my hands on a keyboard before. And when she finished, I couldn't wait to have a go at it. And I walked up and I just started playing it. Dun, 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 both hands. Da, 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 da. Well, the word got back to my parents that Ray's got an ear for music, and he's a piano player. He can just start playing piano. So wasn't too long before I was off to have some lessons. They weren't on the piano, they were on the organ, the Hammond organ. Back in the 60s, the Hammond organs were very popular. There used to be a theatre organ society in Orange, and So I went and had lessons for about a year and just learnt the chords and the show songs, you know, How Are Things in Glockamora, Finnegan's Rainbow, lovely show songs, West Side Story, Sound of Music, and a lot of the pop songs of the day, the wedding song, Lara's theme, and word got around to the Hotel Canopolis manager, Geoffrey Riley, that I could play the organ quite well. And so at the age of 12, my father bought me my first Hammond M101 Hammond organ, and before I knew it, I was playing for weddings at the Hotel Canopolis, upstairs in the Regency room. And I was there for 4 years, every weekend. And I would chop and change between if there was no wedding on, I'd be in the dining room or the cocktail bar, and I'd be chopping and changing with Irene Finneran and Max Fricker on the bandoneon, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And at the age of 16, my father came home and said, there's an apprenticeship available at W.H. Parling's here in Orange in the top block for a piano tuner, and would I like to try out for it? And I said, yeah, sure. So they gave me a test, and yes, I did have an ear, a natural ear, and it could be trained. So I accepted the job, and I began a 4-year apprenticeship with Parling's at the age of 16. And Ian McMaster was my boss. He taught me the trade, and I learned a lot from Ian, and also Clary Wiley. We restored pianos out in the workshop out the back, and behind us there was Alan Brown. He was working as a panel beater in the panel shop at the time, down that little lane. One day, because Ian was a good piano player and drummer, he was in a band called the Modernaires with Joe Freely, Ray Campbell, and David Day, I think, later on. And also Jimmy Sloggett when he was in town. And Ian played a few chords for me, and I started to copy what he was doing, and suddenly he showed me the minor blues scale. And he I thought, wow, listen to that. That's jazz, man. That's blues. So I remember going home to my mother and saying, Mum, listen to this, Mum, listen to this. Of course, Mum, you know, yes, son, yes, Ray, yeah, good on you, Ray. I was so excited, the minor blues scale. And once I learnt that, I started getting speed up, and I started to work out how to improvise, and I started doing scales. And I would do an hour's worth of scales on the organ in the bedroom in Autumn Street before I went to school. Scales and finger exercises by Hannon. And because I learnt that if you want a good technique, if you want speed, if you want to be Tommy Emmanuel, you've got to do your scales. And I thought, well, if I want to be Oscar Peterson or Andre Previn or any number of great jazz pianists, I'd have to get my technique up and get my speed up, and you get fluid. And I remember around 1970-71, the Emerson, Lake and Palmer album Tarkus was released. Well, that just blew me away. Keith Emerson, what a technique that guy has. And I thought, wow, that's setting the bar pretty high. So I started to follow Emerson, Lake and Palmer and get involved. And of course that drew me towards rock and roll. And we formed a band. Albert Calvo came to see me, because every Saturday morning in Summer Street in the top block, Charlie Partridge, the branch manager, would make me go out the front playing the Hammond Piper or the latest Hammond organ model out on the footpath, demonstrating, playing all the show songs. And I was well and truly over the show songs by now. I wanted to rock out, you know. I was starting to grow my hair. And Albert Calvo asked me to join a band with Geoff Cartwright. And we called it Eros. And Bob Carroll on bass.
Joe Newendike on drums, and we were going to enter the Hoadleys Battle of the Sounds, and that's what our goal was. And we used to rehearse out at the Canobolas Hall, out at Canobolas Road there. Even in the middle of winter we'd be out there rehearsing. And we missed the heat in Orange for some reason, but we played the heat in Bathurst and we won that heat. There was about 1,000 kids there in the Bathurst Entertainment Centre, and we won that heat. But then the final was held in Orange, and we were beaten by the Confederates. And that was a big blow. We were quite rivals at those days. We're all good friends now, of course. But they were the better band, and with Colin Newham and Jimmy Peasley and Rob Bartlett and Trevor Weeks. And of course Bobby Arnold, and they had a horn section as well. So after that we played a few gigs around town, and we played Eros. We supported Sherbet on their Central West tour. They played at the Strand Theatre and Dubbo, and we played both shows. We supported them. Richard Clapton was also on that support. He was very young then. And then after that we decided to move to Sydney. And I was in my last year of my apprenticeship at the age of 20, and I went to the Beale Piano Factory to learn how to build pianos in the last year of my apprenticeship. And after I was living in Glebe, and I got involved at the Rocks Push with the jazz guys, and Dudley Wilson Big Band, Colin Nolan, and Claude Papish, and I decided to stay. I wanted to stay in Sydney, and that's how I got to tuning pianos for Parlings in the suburbs, and that's how I met George Young, and that led to me becoming part of Stevie Wright's band. Now that was the first band. There were many others and many more interesting experiences that involved some interesting artists and a lot of colourful stories. So this is part one of my autobiography. A lot of people have asked me to write a book, but I think a video is a bit nicer. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.